Identity politics is the tendency for people of a particular race, social background, etc., to form exclusive political alliances, moving away from traditional broad-based party politics. It can be divisive because it can highlight differences between groups in society and create divides and dislikes for certain groups. For example, black versus white, straight versus gay, Jew versus Arab, Sunni versus Shia, Protestant versus Catholic. But it can also be inclusive because it can be beneficial by bringing individuals together under a shared identity and bring greater awareness to the issues and oppression a certain group faces in order to fight back against that. An example of when identity politics could potentially be divisive is during elections. Within this upcoming election, you see a lot of people blaming groups on their voting choices due to identity politics. More and more people are bandwagoning onto groups and voting for who they believe would benefit their specific group instead of thinking about the general community's needs. People are voting based on identity, like a black voter voting for a black candidate simply for those reasons. Or you saw with white Americans who voted for Trump the operation of the mindset of identity politics because they felt oppressed when minority groups began to have a greater voice in the political sphere, and they wanted to revert to a time when white people held a much stronger grip.
One modern day example of the election in association with identity politics is Pete Buttigieg. He served as mayor of South Bend, Indiana in 2012 and is a Democratic presidential candidate who, as a part of his campaign, is openly gay and represents a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Though identity politics would imply that many people within the LGBTQ plus community would support this one candidate, that is not necessarily the case. The reality for Buttigieg, though, is that his most enthusiastic LGBTQ plus supporters are from a more affluent gay white men part of the spectrum, rather than like the majority of that community.
Transgender and LGBTQ plus community, we can see that identity politics does leave some positive impacts. However, many people within the LGBTQ plus community feel as if that certain terms don't identify them correctly, or some people have different definitions of what it means to be transgender. A larger problem of identity politics is that many people believe if one person speaks for a group, then they represent and reflect all the ideals of that one group, leading back to the idea of voice that we talked about in class and speaking for others. Whether that is true or not, it can still cause political strife within that community.
Of the LGBTQ plus community is that it's a monolith. According to The Guardian, LGBTQ people are not a monolith. We all have different values and opinions on public policy, and there are fierce debates within this population on matters ranging from trans people in sports to whether or not same-sex marriage is actually good for queer people. The problem with identity politics is that it assumes that the LGBTQ plus community is all the same, but the issues that lie within this entire group are individualistic and cannot be applied to all people. Gays have different issues that they are facing compared to trans women, and that goes the same with other groups that fall under the LGBTQ plus community. After gay marriage was legalized, many gay people in the LGBTQ plus community ignored the issues facing transgender individuals and left them behind. This shows how fitting under a certain identity group doesn't guarantee that individual interests will be represented. In the case of identity politics, the benefit of joining a certain group is to call attention to broad-based issues facing a community because you get greater support from all individuals in that community.
Overall, identity politics can be beneficial when garnering a large support group to enact change for minority communities, but it can also lead to divisions within society that further harm and split the country and its individuals, as can be seen in our recent election.